continuing education units. So basically how you do that is you attend this webinar, either in person or virtually. You will get a link, I think tomorrow. You'll take a quiz. If you get, I believe, 80% or more, then you will get your CEU credits. And quickly, just touch upon the agenda here really quickly. We'll do some intro and welcomes from senior leadership here at Pepco and from DOE FEMP, the Federal Energy Management Program. We'll talk through, kind of lay some foundation of federal requirements and mandates to kind of lay the groundwork for Pepco services and program offerings. Then we'll walk through UESC and area-wide contracts. We'll talk through energy efficiency and demand response programs, and then have a resilience panel talking about smart grid innovation and strategy teams. And then finally, some closing remarks. So thanks all for attending. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Pepco Vice President David Bosvik.
No. I think I think the disclaimer was for me, by the way. They tend to do that to me. I just have a couple opening remarks, and it's really good seeing all of you here in person. And for those of you on the phone, thank you for dialing in. It's really cool, too, that you get credits for this. We're very blessed to host you today here at our Pepco headquarters. On behalf of, and as mentioned, I'm the executive over customer operations for PHI, Pepco Holdings. I've been with the company for over 20 years. It's really, really good to see some of my old Constellation Energy colleagues in the room as well. I've been, as I indicated, I've been with the company for over 20 years. On behalf of Pepco and the executive leadership team of Exelon, I just want to acknowledge that we're honored to serve the federal government, very honored to be the utility company here in the District of Columbia, and we very much value and respect the work and the mission critical work that each and every one of you do on a daily basis. I believe that from an energy perspective, our mission is aligned. Reliability, affordability is critical, and I know on the agenda today you're going to be talking about and tackling some of those critical solutions that are needed, not only here in the district, but across this country. There's a huge supply issue that we're all facing. Data centers are here and upon us. So we need to be innovative, we need to be creative, and we need to have sustainable solutions. A few years ago, we were having conversations that were focused on just efficiency and how the world has turned. The supply costs are just astronomical right now. So I appreciate, I value each and every one of you. I value the work that you do. I value your partnership, and just, keep pushing forward and helping us solve some of these tough challenges. Together with FEMP today, we have an incredible agenda. We're co-hosting today's event. And I would really like to get your feedback after the session as well so we can make it better in future years. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic back over. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and next I'm going to pass it to Mary Sotos, Department of Energy's Federal Energy Management Program Director, virtually.
All right, good morning, everyone. Sorry I can't be there in person, but I'm so pleased to see that we have a nice full room in person and lots of folks online. So I first want to say thank you again to Pepco for their partnership, and to Vice President Bosvik for welcoming us into your building today, and for sharing so many really innovative and creative ideas with us on how we can all meet the moment right now. So I have just a few slides here to tell you a little bit about FEMP, for those of you who may not know us very well. But so we're the Federal Energy Management Program. We're an office within the Department of Energy. And I reflect on how FEMP as a program got started. which really resonates, I think, with some of the same themes that are happening just today. So for over 50 years, we have been helping federal agencies manage their energy, both energy use and energy costs. And we were started as a presidential initiative during the oil crisis. So it was a time when there was a focus on supply disruptions and on the real importance of leading by example, starting with federal agencies. So we began as this presidential initiative where we said, can we create a lean, mean team to come together to collect data on behalf of federal agencies, help them figure out what's really happening in their buildings when it comes to energy use. Where can we save energy? Where can we save costs? How can we help agencies partner with their utilities, come up with some creative solutions like on-site generation, or major energy savings projects like UESCs. And so for 50 years, we've continued to innovate and evolve in response to what federal agencies need and what's happening in energy markets and what's happening across administrations and what those policy objectives are. And I think just as Vice President Boswick pointed out, right now we're dealing with some of those same questions around supply constraints, around increasing costs, which brings us back to not only core energy efficiency work, but also a recognition around the importance of energy as an essential part of mission execution. So we can go to the next slide and talk a little bit about how FEMP is, putting I think a finer point on what our mission is in this moment, which is to really help all of you, the federal agencies who are here in the room and online. You are all collectively the country's largest energy consumer, and we're here at FEMP to help you achieve efficient, secure, resilient energy use in mission critical facilities and fleets. And we've demonstrated how to do that over 50 years with billions of dollars of taxpayer money saved because of how we've been able to help you run your buildings more efficiently and enter into the kind of partnerships that we'll be learning about today. And if you want some numbers to help understand this impact, we've been tracking the data, since the 1970s, and we've helped the federal government achieve a 50% energy intensity reduction in federal buildings over that time. And based on all of the investments that agencies are making, both with their own agency appropriation budgets, as well as financing through energy savings performance contracts or UESCs, collectively, the government's on track to reach $60 billion in taxpayer savings through these kind of energy management strategies. We can go to the next slide and just tell you a little bit about some of the key activities that I think that connect with a lot of the offerings that you'll hear about from Pepco today. But bottom line, FEMP is here to help continue to slash federal energy waste, to leverage both private sector finance and partnerships, which really we view as sort of private sector broadly, whether that's utilities, industry, and ESCOs. We're also here to help restore energy resilience across operations and unleash American energy resources, particularly as we're thinking about supply constraints. Many federal agencies have been thinking about what are some ways we can increase supply and backup and redundancy across our facilities as well. And to do that, FEMP has a lot of different tools at our disposal. We have helped with procurement support. We run a contract, an ESPC contract that's available to federal agencies. We work closely with other federal agencies like GSA to help folks navigate procurement, whether it's an area-wide contract or other types of purchasing. We run a competitive grant program. So you'll see one of our grant selectees here in the picture. And all of those grants go towards, again, energy in buildings, reducing costs and improving resilience. And like today, we do a lot of training so that we can equip federal agencies to understand this landscape a little bit better, and provide technical assistance, which is more of that one-on-one site level support to do analysis or other technical support. So we can go to the next slide to tell you a little bit more in a little more detail. Particularly for the federal agencies, we recognize right now and I would say over the last 6 months, it's definitely been a changing landscape that we're all trying to navigate, whether that's for any particular agency, a change in administration priorities, workforce reductions and reshaping. I think every agency has had to do regulatory requirement reviews. Their support contracts may have changed or been reduced. And even the building portfolio itself for many agencies is also shifting. And on top of all of those changes, there's also plenty of changes happening in supply chains as well as just the energy market overall. And again, with each of these changes, FEMP is here to adapt and provide support to agencies, whether we can use our competitive grants to help make up the difference in cost changes that you're seeing in your projects, customized project support, again, utilizing the 50+ years of data that we have to help you all make data-driven decisions, supporting legal reviews, training, and so forth. We can go to the next slide and talk a little bit about, I mentioned technical assistance is something that we offer. So just as a snapshot, in just this past fiscal year, we've done over 100 technical assistance engagements with 25 different agencies, looking at things, helping agencies with things that may feel very fundamental, like metering and auditing, all the way up to things that are fairly sophisticated and complex. You have a big team thinking about project finance. And so we help in a variety of those kind of engagements. And over 50,000 hours of training that we provide. So if this kind of session is helpful for you, please let us know, because we're always trying to make sure we're providing training on the issues that are most important to our customers. And then I think final slide here to just tell you a little bit more, if we can go to the next slide, just on our goal for today, which is to truly make this not just training, but a platform for action. So we hope that based on what you're hearing today, you can request a consultation with FEMP or directly with some of the Pepco contacts that you'll hear about. So in terms of what that follow-up could look like, it would be discussing your site's energy goals, challenges, priorities, identifying some potential program offerings you might hear about today that seem to align with your needs. Or if there's some things that are clearly a good fit, it would mean signing up for those incentives and just connecting with the subject matter experts to learn more about these topics. And it is truly an impressive group of experts that you'll hear from today. So I really encourage you to follow up, take advantage of the wisdom and the innovative and collaborative opportunities that are right here at our fingertips. So if you want to do that, we have this QR code, or you can fill out the linked form that will be made available as well. So that's it from me. But thank you again for joining. I'm really pleased you're here. This is our 9th utility open house, but it's been a little over a year since we've held one. So this is a very exciting way for us to bring this back up to everyone's on everyone's radar. So thank you, and I'll turn it back over to the lead.
Next, we're going to hear from Jeff Gingrich from the National Renewable Energy Lab, making that connection of how utility programs can help federal agencies meet their federal energy goals.
Great. Thanks, Rick. All right. Good morning, everyone. So yeah, my name is Jeff Gingrich. I am a project manager from the National Renewable Energy Lab. I support FEMP on several programs, including the utility program and the new offsite energy procurement program. Been doing this for about 6 years now with a main focus on helping agencies and utilities implement utility energy service contracts, which we'll talk about more in a bit. But as Rick mentioned, obviously our main goal today is to help you all federal agencies understand the programs offered by Pepco. And so before handing the mic over to them, I just want to provide a general overview of the types of programs you'll be hearing about and how those connect back to your federal drivers and goals. So a quick agenda on this section. Again, I'm just going to hit some of the main requirements, and then we'll go through a few specific offerings like utility energy service contracts. We'll talk about GSA area-wide contracts, how those can be utilized, talk a bit about demand response and time variable pricing, and a bit on resilience. If we go to the next slide. So I probably don't need to tell this group this, but obviously federal agencies are facing ambitious energy and resilience goals. There's also some very significant barriers from limited staff capacity to just the complex energy environment that we're in, limited funding, and utilities are really uniquely positioned to help federal agencies solve some of these challenges. They obviously know you, they know your sites, they control the tariffs and the rates that you're on that directly shape your energy costs. So they naturally can help come up with solutions. They're starting to offer more turnkey type solutions that can really take the pressure off procurement teams to do individual projects and look for solutions that they can take that pressure off the staff and provide anything from resilience to UESCs. Thirdly, they have local expertise of the grid, so they can help you navigate those challenges, again, understanding your needs and the best solutions there. Finally, they share mutual goals with the federal government to both enhance the grid, reduce consumption, and really make sure that everything is operating. So there's an added incentive there to make sure these projects are successful. We go to the next slide. Wanted to, again, focus on some of these federal requirements. If you only remember one that I point out today, I want it to be this top one, which is the authorization for taking advantage of utility incentive programs. So this comes from the Energy Policy Act of 1992, specifically 42 USC 8256. And it says that agencies are authorized to accept any financial incentive, good or service, generally available from a utility to increase energy efficiency or to conserve water or manage electricity demand. So this is just important to keep in mind. Anything that's being discussed today, certainly you can take advantage of. There shouldn't be any questions about that. Obviously, if you ever do have questions about whether or not you can accept one of these programs or participate, you can always reach out to FEMP for that type of support. A few other specific ones to call out. There is still a statutory requirement for renewable energy use at 7.5%. So obviously a utility can help source that. Moving on down, the bottom one on this slide relates to implementing energy and water efficiency measures, and it ties back to the ESA audit requirement that facilities have to complete audits every 2 years. And the EA 2020 actually updated this, took it a step further by requiring that agencies implement 50% of those measures that are life cycle cost effective through energy performance contracts like UESCs. So obviously Pepco can play a big role in helping with that and also helping with the energy audit portion as well. Utilities often offer programs to help with energy audits, and those requirements can definitely be fulfilled just through the UESC process and the preliminary assessment investment grade audits that come as part of that. We go to the next slide. The last two we'll mention here are on metering and water conservation. So there are requirements for installing meters and tracking energy use. Obviously critical for being able to do anything at your site is understanding the energy use that's happening there. So metering projects can be implemented via area-wide contracts. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Then water conservation obviously is a key piece of UESCs as well. So on that, we'll jump into UESCs. If you move forward to the next slide, Andrew. So UESCs offer a proven pathway for reducing energy waste and cutting costs, and specifically by working with your utility. So if you're unfamiliar, UESC is a type of energy performance contract that helps facilities improve, upgrade infrastructure, replace aging equipment, all without the need of upfront funding, because it's typically done through financing, and that's paid off through the energy savings over the course of that contract. They're really unique programs for helping agencies do more with their existing budget without having to wait for potential future appropriations, address that long list of deferred maintenance that's typically there at facilities, and get work done in the near term. We go to the next slide. I wanted to emphasize that the word performance is really the backbone of UESC. So these projects aren't just about installing measures. They're really about making sure that there's long-term performance tied to those measures. This creates accountability for the contractor, Pepco in this case, to make sure there's a plan in place for those systems to continue to perform. And that's truly the unique advantage of these types of contracts. So the prime contractor is a serving distribution utility like Pepco. They'll typically finance that project up front, and then the agency will make annual payments from the savings over the course of that contract. So if you're familiar with energy savings performance contracts or ESPCs, it's the same concept, but instead of working with an ESCO here, you're working with Pepco or your utility. Go to that next slide. We'll talk through some of the unique advantages of performance contracts and UESC specifically. Obviously, the overall goal is to help implement a project that achieves energy savings or at least is budget neutral, meaning that those savings from the project exceed payments over the course of the contract. And while most projects are financed, agency can also bring appropriations to the project. So it allows you to source funds from many different places to really try to create a comprehensive project. So what's unique about this is rather than having to do one-off standalone projects at your site and try to kind of chip away at things you want to get done, this allows you to really take a comprehensive look at the entire site and implement solutions that are going to be long-lasting. So the contracts themselves can be up to 25 years, and that allows a long window to accrue those savings and pay for complex, big investments into the site. You can include multiple sites in a contract. So if you have multiple sites in Pepco's territory, they can be combined into a single contract. Again, just taking advantage of less individual procurements and doing more at one time. And then the key advantage, again, I talked about long-term performance. That's an actual requirement in UESCs is a performance assurance plan, which essentially asks the utility to work with the agency to develop a plan to put in place requirements and processes for things like operations and maintenance, ongoing measurement verification, periodic recommissioning, all these things that the agency needs to have in place to ensure that those savings are going to accrue over a long period of time. Now that's a flexible plan. So who actually implements those services is negotiated between the agency and the utility. And there is no specific requirement for a savings guarantee. So if you're familiar with ESPCs, that's a big difference there. Sometimes those can still be potentially negotiated, but it is not a requirement by default. Let's go to the next slide and just kind of go through a high-level picture of how this process works. And Joe's going to take you through some of the specifics of how Pepco goes about this, but I'll just give you a flavor of it. So generally, let's assume this project's starting with selecting Pepco as the utility. Typically, you're going to reach out and notify all of your utilities, the natural gas, the water, and the electric, and do a competition to select those. Once you've selected your utility, they'll come out and do a preliminary assessment, really take a high-level look at all the opportunities at your site, verify that there's a feasible project there. And this is typically done at no cost. Once the agency feels comfortable with the concept and the project, they'll move forward to investment grade audit, which is much more detailed, gets into the subcontractor bids, the financing, really all those details that the agency needs to feel confident entering into a long-term agreement like this. After that project's awarded, it'll be installed by the utility, potentially working with an ESCO partner. But it's not until all those measures are, the performance is verified, that the savings is there, everything's commissioned, that it's at that point when the agency actually accepts the measures and payments begin. And that triggers the longer term performance period where that performance assurance plan comes into play that I mentioned. We go to the next slide. Just wanted to show some common examples of the types of ECMs. Again, I think Joe will probably talk about this as well, but there's a lot that can be done here. If you're interested, there's a very specific definition of ECM, but in general, it is any measure that's tied to a federal building that's related directly or indirectly related to energy or water use that can result in energy savings. So this can look like a number of different things. Some very common ECMs, just equipment upgrades and replacement, things like lighting and HVAC, boilers, chillers, motors and drives. There's also building envelope, so windows, roofs, insulation. You can look at the systems that help the building run more efficiently in general, so energy management controls and building automation systems. And then services, which you may not necessarily think of, like recommissioning, having them come in and make sure that systems that were installed in the past are running optimally. You can even capture savings from changes to your utility bill. So if a project results in a rate adjustment or your ability to participate in a demand response program, those types of savings can also be captured. And then, of course, on-site energy systems are fairly common, especially in places with expensive energy that can be supplemented with on-site systems. So the size and scale can obviously vary quite a bit. There's no minimum or maximum on these types of contracts. The bottom line is you're trying to develop a project that has a bundle of ECMs that the entire combined payback is less than 25 years. So you can still include measures that might be more expensive with an individual payback that's longer than that, as long as it can be balanced out with savings from other ECMs. So very common to use excess savings from a measure like lighting to help pay for a more complex measure like an on-site energy system. All right, and I'll end the UESC portion by just showing an example of a project. Again, Joe is going to show a couple case studies, I believe, a Pepco project. So I wanted to just present one on a different one that's been done across the country. So this one, we're showing a project done at Fort Bliss. I think Mary actually highlighted that this was one of the projects that received an AFFECT grant. It's a really great project that shows how UESCs can be used to enhance resilience as well as utilize cost savings. So this was awarded in June 2022, the New Mexico Gas Company. It's about a 24-year contract where the site invested almost $60 million. Again, they were able to utilize a $1 million AFFECT grant to help with this. The expected life cycle savings of the project is $132 million. And again, the objectives of the project were to improve resilience, address aging infrastructure, reduce long-term energy and water expenses, and also to benefit the utility's broader service territory by freeing up capacity during critical events. So that's where that microgrid comes in. And so some of the specific measures, the microgrid that serves 142 buildings, 102 of which are mission critical, that it comes with a 15 megawatt distributed energy system and 2 megawatts of battery storage. Some of that was able to be paid for through the lighting that they also installed. So there's excess savings on the lighting that was used to help pay for that microgrid. And then critically, there was also, they addressed their water resilience by refurbishing an existing well and installing transmission lines so that they didn't have to rely on external sources of water. So really great project. We actually did a webinar on it a week or two ago. If you'd like to learn more, definitely let me know. All right, so let's move on to the next type of offering, I guess you could say, that I want to focus on, which is potentially one of the most underutilized procurement tools, I think, available to federal customers, and that's GSA area-wide contracts. So GSA area-wide contracts are actually the mechanism that are typically used to award UESCs, but they are umbrella agreements that GSA negotiates with regulated utilities across the country. So obviously Pepco has one of these as well. They're intended to streamline the procurement of energy and energy related services. So the key advantage here is that GSA pre-negotiates terms and conditions so that when an agency is setting up a contract with a utility, they aren't starting from scratch. There's already something there for them to work with, can save a lot of time. And any federal facility that's a customer of a utility holding an area-wide contract can use it. So it's not limited to GSA facilities. And while this can sound complex and intimidating, anything in the contracting world, I think, does. These are specifically designed to be straightforward and to help agencies streamline this process. So there's a couple of exhibits we'll talk about. One of them is the exhibit for energy management services. That's the one that's actually used for UESCs. And then the other one is the exhibit for electric service. And that covers just your connection, your termination of connecting service with a utility, but can they also be used for other types of infrastructure upgrades. And there's a specific type of service in there called special facilities, which is a really broad category and can be used for lots of different types of infrastructure programs, infrastructure improvements that maybe wouldn't fit under a UESC because they don't necessarily result in savings, but they're still critical. So share a few examples of what those are as well. A couple keynotes though. Area-wide contracts typically have a 10-year base term. So when they're awarded, it'll be for about 10 years. They're typically renewed. But we want to be clear that that doesn't actually limit a UESC. The UESC can still be 25 years if it's awarded within that. Pepco does have an area-wide contract, which I'll show here on the next slide. But it's important to keep in mind that not all utilities do. So just for general awareness, it's important to check and not just assume that they do, because it can take a bit of time to set one of those up if it's not existing. And then you can download and view all of those on the GSA's website. So if we go to the next slide, it's going to be really, really hard to read any of this. So maybe when you get the downloaded slides, you can take a look. But I wanted to show that the examples of Exhibit A and Exhibit B and how the natures of service are listed in these. So on the left, you have Exhibit A, which is that authorization for electric service, the one used for connecting, changing, disconnecting line extensions, and the special facilities that I mentioned, which is that broad category of infrastructure improvements. On the right is Exhibit B, and that's the one that's typically used for UESCs. So in that blue box where I highlighted the natures of service, you'll see things like preliminary assessment, investment grade audit, installing ECMs, those types of things. If we go to the next slide. Since we already discussed UESCs, I just wanted to highlight some examples of projects that are done under this other exhibit, Exhibit A. And I mentioned you can think of a lot of the special facilities types projects as infrastructure upgrades, ways of doing maybe one-off resilience improvements. So things that have been done underneath Exhibit A are things like undergrounding lines, emergency backup generation and repairs to generators, lightning protection, substation and distribution system upgrades, redundant feeders. So it's a very broad, this is certainly not an exhaustive list. And it should be something that you could explore if you're looking to do, like I said, some standalone improvements at your site. There's a lot of contracting resources that are available both on the FEMP website and the GSA website if you're interested in learning more about how to navigate this area-wide contract. All right. So if we go to the next slide, we'll shift our attention to demand response programs. So we want to discuss this today because obviously this is becoming a very important issue. Our first speaker discussed the fact that, there's obviously lots of new demands on the grid that are coming through things like data centers. And what we're seeing is that the generation capacity isn't being added fast enough to keep pace with all these new loads that are being added to the grid. So this imbalance increases the risk of grid stress and outages. And really, as the federal government, being the largest energy consumer across the country, does have a role and is uniquely positioned to help maintain grid reliability. In addition, there's obviously a big financial incentive for focusing on demand response as well. Demand-related charges can be a really big portion of your bill. So, anywhere from 40 to 50% or more in some regions of the country, you're paying for just the kilowatt usage, not even talking about kilowatt hours. So employing demand management strategy in general can help lower your costs. But when you add in the fact that utilities also offer financial incentives for participating in these programs, sometimes regardless of whether or not you actually are called on to respond to an event, it can be a really attractive thing for agencies to be thinking about. A lot of these programs are underutilized by federal facilities. We have a database at FEMP, this part of our utility program navigator that I'll talk about at the end of this segment, which has over 600 demand response programs listed across more than 100 utilities. So there are a lot of flexible participation models. We'll talk about a few of those here on the next slide, because these come in a wide range of flavors, I guess you'd say. So programs are typically tailored to local or regional conditions. In general, they provide financial incentives for reducing electricity during peak demand events. So there's a few examples here. Interruptible programs, peak load management programs, they're called various things. But like I said, what they have in common is that they require participants to lower electricity during electricity demand during specific time windows. So either scheduled in advance or triggered in real time, with compensation models provided in return for participation. So I think you'll be hearing later about this PJM demand response program. A lot of those are triggered a day or two in advance. And so you can get notifications, try to adjust your consumption accordingly. And there are services that GSA and others provide to help provide those notifications as well if you're a facility that isn't signed up for those. Couple general techniques that can be applied to respond. You have, I think, just concepts like load shifting, where you're not actually reducing your overall consumption, you're just moving it to a time of day where electricity is less in demand on the grid. So this can be done through things like pre-cooling buildings or just changing operational schedules when you have that kind of flexibility. There's also load shedding, which that is reducing your overall consumption, typically with support from things like on-site energy and storage systems. If we go to the next slide, also wanted to highlight the benefits of time variable rates, which can be thought of as more informal price-based versions of demand response. So unlike traditional flat rate billing, where you're paying the same amount for electricity all day, time variable rates are set up so that you're paying different prices depending on the time of day. Obviously cheaper prices when there's less electricity demand on the grid, and higher prices, quite a bit higher prices when you're in those peak periods. So these will be called things like time of use pricing, critical peak pricing, real-time pricing, where the prices actually change constantly. So each offers an opportunity for savings, especially beneficial for facilities that have some flexibility to shift around their load. Can be difficult for some, depending on their operations, for sure. If we go to the next slide, we'll just highlight a couple examples of federal facilities that have taken advantage of these types of programs. One, the William S. Boorhead Federal Building, which utilized a time variable pricing rate, implemented load shifting, and was able to save almost $300,000 just within the first 3 years of doing that. There's a VA medical center in Maryland, which enrolled in a demand response program, and just using small generators and manual curtailment, they were able to save almost $500,000 as of last year. And then also highlighting that there's a number of GSA facilities in California and PGE's territory that are participating in demand response and receiving $2 a kilowatt hour for their reductions. So just a few examples of how those are showing up around the country. Finally, if you go to the next slide, the last kind of general topic I was going to briefly discuss was resilience. I think we all know that federal resilience is no longer just about having a single backup generator at a site. It's a lot more comprehensive, and utilities are stepping up to offer new solutions to help facilities meet these goals. So what's important here is that these solutions are often mutually beneficial. So they strengthen the grid and help federal agencies stay operational during grid outages. So types of programs that we're starting to see pop up, things like resilience as a service or shared and co-located generators. So they're designed, owned, and operated by the utility, and then they offer mutual benefits to the site and the utility. And then there's also customizable programs. So I mentioned again that GSA Airwed contract. you can use that to address one-off or individual resilience upgrades. All right, if we go to, I think, my last slide, I think I'm gonna pass through this one, but this is a good example of demand response and how it's impacting parts of the U.S. territories. This is specifically looking at Puerto Rico. So if you have time, I definitely encourage you reading through that one, but I'm going to keep moving just for the sake of time and highlight this utility program navigator that I mentioned. So this is a tool that we launched this year. It's a free public-facing tool that's really designed to help energy managers quickly identify incentive programs that are available to them. So, the goal here is to help keep you from having to weed through lots of websites and trying to figure out what applies to me and what doesn't apply to me. We're trying to do that work for you and bring that information right up front. So it's designed to be an easy to use tool. You can search by the utility or program name or by state. In this example, in the screenshot here, I actually searched by Pepco to see what would come up and brought up some of their demand response programs. We are in the process of updating this, so this gets updated a couple times a year to stay relevant. Might be especially important to check out before next year's demand response season to see what's available. Can be a great tool to just start identifying these programs. And with that, I think we'll move into, we can do a quick Q&A if we have any questions, or we can move on to hand it over to our Pepco partners. Oh, so hand it over to Pepco. Thanks all.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. All right, next we have Joe Cohen, Pepco Manager for Strategic Programs, to talk about Pepco's UESC program and area-wide contract. Thanks, Joe.
All right, good morning, everyone. As Rick said, I'm Joe Cohen, Manager of Strategic Programs with our large customer services group. Before I get into the presentation, just a little bit about our group. So we basically represent the key accounts across Pepco and really also Pepco Holdings as well. And so that's really any customer that is above 500 kW and above, which is obviously everyone in our federal space. Of that group, about the top 150 or so are actively managed, and those are managed by our key account managers. And so for those that are in the room and on the phone who are federal or GSA, your account manager is actually right over there. That's Dan Reinholtz. And if you're DOD, our account manager is actually in the back. That's Michael Haywood. Give a little, there you go. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, so questions obviously that you have, whether it's billing, if looking to, issues of service, or, looking to feed off, switch off a feed or something like that, or schedule an outage. Obviously, those are your key points of contact there. I guess we can move on next slide. All right, just a little brief about Pepco. So as we have our service territory over here. So we cover the District of Columbia, as well as good parts of the Maryland suburbs of DC. So largely of Prince George's County and Montgomery County. We were first incorporated in 1896. So obviously we have a long history within the District of Columbia. Fun fact, I think we actually started out as providing power to DC streetcar in the 1890s, but certainly have a long history of a long presence here. We serve about 900,000 customers, and that's total, residential and commercial. Obviously not included on the map is some of our sister operating companies that are part of Pepco Holdings. So we also have Delmarva Power, that's obviously the Eastern Shore, Maryland and Delaware, and Atlantic City Electric, which is South Jersey. And then above Pepco Holdings is probably people are aware of is Exelon. So that includes Baltimore Gas and Electric, Pico, ComEd in Chicago, Pico in Philadelphia as well. We can move on to the next one. All right. Jeff obviously hit on a lot of these points. But really, as we understand is, what obviously there's been executive action and really the focus on strengthening reliability and security, of the grid, of ensuring, as we said before, those facilities, we know you have a lot of facilities that are mission critical, and understanding that they maintain operations and also, keeping costs relatively at a minimum. Again, David in his opening remarks and mentioned obviously the energy security issues that are going on with PJM. And this is going to be a common theme, not just throughout my presentation, but I think and others, is that with obviously a lot of load growth, largely contributed to data centers and AI, that is having an upward pressure on energy costs. And that is obviously impacting all of our customers, both large and small. And obviously, as we know, that is, top of mind for our customers, is find strategies to be able to lower those costs in the future. And so we're going to get into kind of what we think here is certainly a solution. It's not necessarily the solution, but it's a solution. Our utility energy service contracts, or UESCs. So again, we hit on these points before, but obviously the advantages of these agreements, of these contracts, is that streamlined procurement process. So you, as a federal agency, you're able to sole source to us, Pepco. So it doesn't, that obviously don't have to put out for RFP or for bid. So that obviously, certainly makes things easier. You could leverage obviously financing. I'll go into a little bit of this in a further slide. And obviously one of the great things is that it's paid for by obviously those energy costs and O&M savings over the long term. And obviously you have the backing of, us, the utility partner, and we can obviously lend your expertise. So next slide. All right, a little bit of an overview of area-wide. Again, Jeff mentioned this before, but it is a blanket master contract. And it's between Pepco and the GSA. Certainly have the contract number right up there on the screen for those who want to reference it. I guess you go to sam.gov or wherever you find federal contracting, you can search for it. And it is a 10-year contract. It was recently renewed in 2020, so it's going to go up through 2030. And obviously, is the way the GSA area-wide is structured, is that you can take a UASC through the area-wide and obviously take advantage of that vehicle to for energy conservation measures that are obviously expressly especially stated within the area-wide. And it is a federal acquisition regulation or FAR compliant contract vehicle. Again, who's saying to streamline for the benefit of obviously agencies to obtain, energy services, both water and energy efficiency and improvements and demand reduction services. One thing I want to also point out, and this is sort of reference about, again, taking advantage of the GSA area-wide within, you have to be a federal facility within our service territory. And we're the only utility within the capital region that has an active area-wide. So if you are interested in taking advantage of this vehicle for now, you got to come to us, Pepco. I'd move on to the next slide. All right. I think I actually went over this slide earlier, or Jeff did. But again, this kind of just shows what are the different exhibits within the area-wide contract. So we have Exhibit A, so that authorizes for electric service. We do currently have a number of federal facilities that take their electric service utilizing this currently. And so that right now, so that would be for largely distribution services only, since a lot of federal customers, they utilize third-party suppliers. So it'd just be for the distribution service, unless you do take the SOS standard offer service to Pepco, then it could be kind of the whole gamut of the bill. But not just for energy service, but I think what's always said is that for line extensions, things like that, for service relocations, substation and switchgear replacement, that kind of thing. And then Exhibit C, that's typically what the UESC comes under that authorization. And so, that's really where a lot of, the bulk of our ECM type UESC projects materialized for the Exhibit C, but not just through, I say, typical energy conservation measures, but as Jeff also pointed out, it could also be utilized for a lot of resiliency type services. So if that is on-site generation, obviously to ensure, that, you have it either for backup power or to maintain, resiliency. And also, I think we're going to talk a little bit more in a panel later on, but that could also be utilized for things like maybe microgrids or battery energy storage, obviously for maintaining that resiliency efforts. Move on next slide. All right, gonna quickly walk through kind of our USC process that we have. So the first one here is actually, we kind of got this one already checked off. So that is obviously the contract is, brokered between us and the federal government. So we already have done that. And the second one is the utility kind of onboards a network of ESCO partners. And we already actually have that one already checked off as well. And I want to be clear about this is, so for us, we do rely a lot on our ESCO partners, really for business and project development, but really from the beginning to the end, kind of leading the agency through the project, recommending what potential measures they should do, and kind of being really that serve as the prime, or sorry, so we're the prime contractor, but really that they're the subcontractor, but in order to kind of lead them, the customer along the way to project execution. And then moving on, I'll say is that, again, as I said before, we do rely a lot on ESCO networks, but it doesn't have to necessarily be that way, right? So, if you're an agency and you're not entirely sure what to do, right? You might say, hey, our energy costs are going up. Our facility managers might be, hey, we know we have a boiler that's like 30 years old and not sure what to do. Yeah, obviously you can come to us, you can come to me, and we can try and get that process started. We can work with you getting like a preliminary assessment done, and I'll go a little bit further into some of these details. And then we will then find out, Pepco will then RFP to find an ESCO network. But again, as we showed, our ESCO network is pretty active in the area. They're having conversations, obviously, with a lot of our federal customers. And, we certainly encourage them to act, obviously, on our behalf to do so, and certainly appreciate that. Kind of moving on then, so once, either it's us as a utility or the ESCO, they agree to basically to do a project, come to contract, and then we'll basically agree to sign a task order. And that task order will be explicit of what are the typical ECMs, what are the costs, final costs, and payback periods and payment schedules. One thing I want to also go through here is the financing portion. So potentially, there are no upfront costs required. And a lot of that can be done is that either the ESCO or as a utility, we can have third-party financing, backed by us, or again, as the ESCO. So for those agencies where you might not unsure necessarily of when the appropriations will finally pay off the end of the project, that is a possibility. But again, it is set up, again, similar to ESPCs, that ultimately the savings that are materialized through the project are what pay back that project cost and the financing. And lastly, we're managing that contract, right? So obviously, the way it's structured is usually the agency will pay us back, and then we can then remit back the ESCO, or even potentially the agency could then pay the ESCO directly and then have some system back to us. I will say is that the utility does have a small admin fee attached to each of these projects. And that's really just for our oversight, obviously, and it depends on how much involvement we have. But again, as I said before, you have the backing and expertise of the utility behind these projects. So if there's something like, again, if it's substation work or switchgear group, we have a whole department, engineering departments who do this every day, who can obviously work with our federal partners in helping them get those projects across the line. Move on to the next slide. All right. So the benefits, kind of hit on these a lot of it, but obviously a huge benefit is that this really is a way to pursue a wide range of projects. And, again, as I said before, we're the general contractor providing oversight. And, we talked about, obviously, one of the main benefits of the UESE is the fact that you can sole source to the utility. And that can obviously streamline and shorten that process. If you're going through like the ESPC route where you got RFP, certainly could take much longer. And as I said before, obviously you have the backing of the utility partner. One other, potentially it's a benefit is, and a little difference than ESPC, the UESC doesn't have a guarantee of energy savings for these projects. And that might come handy if you're doing something, a project where maybe, again, it doesn't quite pencil out over that 25 years, but you believe that project is absolutely mission critical. But even if it doesn't necessarily have that energy savings guarantee, so it can't really go through that ESPC route, it does come with a project assurance plan. So there is essentially a guarantee that comes with it through like pretty involved evaluation, measurement, verification, that the project can materialize and realize, obviously, the benefits the benefits of the project. And it is obviously also designed to be cash flow positive. And that's obviously a huge benefit. Obviously, is you're not going to do the project unless you, it nets out and there's savings to be had. And then I'll go on to benefits to the utility. Obviously, as I think folks are well aware, is we have a huge federal footprint within our service territory. I don't know if we have like the largest Navy square footage of federal facilities, but certainly we have the most dense. And obviously, being able to serve our customers and really, have some say in some of the projects that they do, I think really goes a long way. And it also, we'll have Tom talk about this and Crystal. It also helps, increase participation in our regulated utility incentive programs. We have pretty ambitious goals, to be honest, in some of those programs. So any assistance or help, if you have a project, we're here to provide those upfront costs, help take down some of those upfront costs through our participating in energy efficiency program. And likewise, we were able to meet some of our regulatory goals. And lastly is, again, increased resiliency. This obviously is a benefit across the board, for not just obviously benefits to you for your customers, federal customers, federal facilities, but it's a benefit obviously to the utility as a whole, right? So, if you're able to find a measure that's able to say bring down, demand or peak demand or demand charges, that's, over the long run, that's also less peak demand that say PJM has to procure, right? That's going to help drive those energy costs down, which benefits everybody, right? I assume we have a lot of folks in the room who are not only are you in charge of federal facility, but you might be a Pepco ratepayer at your home. And so, there's certainly a multiplier effect here. So that, engage in the UESCs, take part in being able to reduce costs, reduce peak demand. There's benefits to be had, throughout the service territory. Move on the next slide. All right, project process. So obviously the first step here is the preliminary assessment. So that assesses whether, again, there's opportunities to be had for UESC. I think Jeff mentioned this. Typically, those are free at cost to the federal customers, and they'll come out, they'll do a walkthrough, and they'll kind of just see what is viable and what is potentially not. They'll probably also give you some simple payback periods just to assess, where that is, and then they'll sit down with the federal government and decide whether or not the UESC is basically right opportunity for you or not. If you say a federal government says yes, then we can move on to the next stage. That's sort of the investment grade audit. And that is a much more kind of detailed analysis. You might be wondering if you're already doing a preliminary assessment, why do you need another audit? But that really is to ensure that the cash flows that, say that you're going to be able to meet by doing this project are there, that the measures that we say that you're going to get installed are going to realize those savings. And it also involves kind of fine tuning some of the, assessments and ECMs, and really to ensure that this project is going to do what we say it is. And there is typically a cost associated with the IGA. And again, once that is done, we got a project plan, then we can move on to the implementation of it. So that's sort of where the final design of the ECMs is done, and obviously the construction. I think Jeff had hit on this, but again, a lot of these projects can take a long time. We've had UASC projects obviously predate me quite a bit, but they've been ongoing for 10 years or more. I mean, it said the contracts are up to 25 years, but basically we have folks who might say, hey, we wanted to install a new chiller. And then after that chiller is installed, they're like, oh, why don't we do some retro commissioning, or why don't we install some automation systems? And so they just keep kind of multiplying effect here. And so a lot of these, again, so a lot of these projects do take a long, long time. And then kind of, again, once the project is complete, then we go on to the post-implementation part. And that's actually where potentially the agency might, either through the ESCO that's leading the project, that's where they potentially take advantage of rebates that are offered by the utility. Again, we'll go into more detail about that one. And also have the verification plan that is done. And again, just general continuing of O&M operation maintenance, ensuring that the measures are doing as we said they were. All right, next slide. All right, so solutions. I'm going to start actually here at the bottom. I think we've already talked over a lot of these, and but lighting upgrades for resource conservation and controls, chiller cooling and replacement, things like building automation systems, variable frequency drives, and obviously the benefit of that. Again, we said this before. Cost savings, operational and maintenance. But I do want to also then talk about a little bit what's kind of at the top here, because maybe this hasn't traditionally been part of UASCs before, but we understand obviously is, with the our federal government and kind of the energy priorities at the moment, ensuring that maintenance of mission critical infrastructure. So that's where things like on-site generation, battery storage, and again, we'll have a panel coming up on this later. To kind of talk about some of these type of projects, but another thing is also distributed energy resources, battery storage, energy management, again, demand response technologies, and really that plays a massive role in resiliency, islanding mode, for example, ensuring that our customers, federal customers, again, they can maintain operations depending on whatever is going on at the grid at the moment, and that they're not down, that they have that that power source to be able to to continue on. Can move on, next slide. All right, we have a couple of case studies here. So the first one is at NASA. So that won the FEMP Energy and Water Management Project Award back in 2022. So that was a UASC with 16 different ECMs and 15 buildings. It did receive some funding from Pepco, our utility rebates through the Empower program. So the contract term was 11 years. Investment was about $28 million, and it's paying back about $1.8 million per year. And some of the conservation measures that were implemented at the campus, lighting, plumbing fixtures, obviously retro commissioning, chiller placement, data center improvements, modern-based commissioning, and some campus-wide metering. Move on, next slide. All right, here's the next one is the U.S. Department of State. So that's kind of an ongoing effort here. It's kind of started out in 2015. It's kind of conversion from the steam to natural gas boilers. But that's actually just how it started out. Again, that's a project I think that's been a lot of stuff has been added on over time. This is actually for the Harry S. Truman Building. So things like, again, automation, duct cleaning, replacement of the cooling tower, and the initial investment over there is $30 million. And this is a project I want to say is, I think for those in the room particularly are probably well aware, that a lot of essentially the area around the National Mall, we have a lot of buildings that are currently utilizing steam through the HODA plant. I know there's probably some GSA folks either in the room or on the phone. I know there's been a lot of discussions about the future state of that plant and what potentially, could come next. I think this is obviously a good snapshot of what could potentially come next. Obviously, I'm not trying to say that a UESC is the only option there to kind of decide what GSA decides to do with it. But it certainly could obviously play a significant role. So I obviously wanted to kind of just highlight that as we understand, GSA is certainly got things to consider about. Obviously, we know that, the steam rates, I think, are just compounding, and obviously it's becoming quite uneconomical, unfortunately, to operate. And it is, over 100 plus years old, I think, at this point, or close to it. So we can move on. Next slide. I think this is the next one. All right. So I mentioned our ESCO network. Right now, we have 5 currently within our network, and we do, they are vetted. So we do have a application process that we go through. And certainly it's not necessarily limited. We potentially could be expanding it to others in the future. But as of right now, if you are planning to do UESC, it would be through one of these entities. And I do want to, again, say that if you are talking to one of them, that's fine. Obviously, continue on. We're obviously looking for potentially more projects. But again, if you're just looking to start out, feel free to reach out to myself, and we're happy to, to figure out what are the best next stages for you. And then we'll obviously reach out to our ESCO network, again, to see who might potentially interested in a future project. And I think that's my last slide. All right, that's it. There's my contact information. I guess I'll open up any questions in the room virtually.
Yeah, Joe, we do have one question virtually. Try to speak up here without a mic. So often the payments exceed the life of the equipment and do not take maintenance and equipment failure replacement. How do you make provisions for that?
Can you repeat that question?
Often the payments exceed the life of the equipment and do not take maintenance and equipment failure replacement into account. How do you make provisions for that? And Jeff can support as well.
Yeah, I might actually ask Jeff. I'm gonna phone a friend here.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, things like repair and replacement should be taken into account when you're developing out your financial schedules, essentially. So if you have a piece of equipment, you're doing a 25-year project, and then a piece of equipment is only going to last 15 years, is going to need to be replaced within that contract. Those expenses should be accounted for and balanced out by the savings. So if you're not able to, if having to replace that piece of equipment partway through the contract is going to make it too expensive to be able to be paid off by savings, then maybe that ECM will drop out, or you'd be looking for other ways of supplementing the savings. So again, like I said, maybe another ECM has excess savings that can be used to help pay for that equipment replacement. Maybe some funds can be brought to the project, but ultimately, yes, there are pieces of equipment we know they don't last 25 years, and they will need to be planned for in those financial schedules to make sure that those savings still balance out the payments. And the same goes for operations and maintenance and all that stuff. That all gets considered and built into the financial schedules before that project gets awarded. It's definitely not something you want to deal with 15 years into the contract. You want to be thinking about planning for those things before the project itself gets awarded.
Hey, Jeff. With that, thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Now speaking, we're going to have Tom Deschke. I think I already messed that up. Deschke. Thank you. All right. Senior Energy Efficiency Program Manager at Pepco to talk about Maryland and DC commercial and industrial energy efficiency and demand response programs. So here's Tom.
I changed my mind.
I'll do it.
Thank you, and it's great to be here with you all today. Kudos for all you attending in person and online across the country. Really wonderful to be here with you all. The federal government has been an early adopter for a long time. I've been in the area of high performance buildings for 27 years. And so I saw early adoption on high performance building across the board, energy efficiency and otherwise, early on by Naval Facilities Command, by GSA, of course, and various energies. So their participation in leadership has been crucial to advancement of energy efficiency and other innovations for high performance buildings. I'll be covering the Maryland portion of Pepco's service area for utilities, as well as that of Delmarva Power. So DC will be covered next. And specifically, it's the Empower Maryland program. The Empower Maryland Act of 2008 created these energy efficiency programs to incentivize customers and contribute to long-term grid reliability. As shown here in the slide, there's a ripple effect from this, yielding other significant benefits to our customers, communities, and economy. This is serious business. It's not fluff. It's a great investment with significant returns on investment. We talk a lot about jobs. There's job creation involved here. It makes economic sense. Next slide, please. So here's PHI's internal Empower Maryland management team. And like I said, it was a regulation that created Empower Maryland. So yes, we have to do it. Our utility has to do this, but we want to do it. It's good for our customers. It's good for our grid. And so, we're 110% into it. It's a win-win situation across the board. So our internal team, led by Brian Crawford, and then managing programs besides myself is Dorcas and Stan. And we split up the programs between us. But it's not just us, thank goodness. There's a lot of work to be done, and we have a fantastic implementation contractor, ICF. They're here to support us, but especially you, our customers, in various ways, leading through processes, through technical issues. So for example, our account executives for the commercial industrial customer service areas here, highlighted here, the contact names and information will be shown in bigger text on the last slide. And of course, they'll all be getting the PDF of this or already have. So a similar team focuses on small business accounts. And I'd like to give a shout out to one of the account executives who's in the audience today, Will Johnson, covers Prince George's County. Will, would you please stand and be recognized? And so everyone flocked to him on the next break to ask him questions, to ask him for assistance. Dave Lowe covers Montgomery County. He was not able to attend this event today, unfortunately. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to read through this slide. Would you all like to join me reading through the slide? I figured that would be a really fun group event. I'm joking. It's a joke. It's trying to lighten things up. No, this is really just presented here because the Maryland state legislation prompted, this is big news that for us anyway, regulators changed Empower Maryland metrics, the program's metrics from megawatt hours saved to greenhouse gas emissions savings. So that's metric tons of CO2 equivalents, as you'd expect, and that's just started this year. So this has opened up new possibilities and incentive strategies beyond just electricity only, so dual fuel, et cetera. So a box has been opened, and we're going to pull a lot of presents out of it to offer incentives on more strategies to y'all. This is just to get a sense of the overall program portfolio. I'm going to be going through some of these in more depth. And just want to point out that the small business program there in the lower right, that can be used for any customer account having less than 100 kW demand at any time. So on the bill, if there's no demand charge, that means automatically in there. If there's a demand charge, you look at the chart. If over the last year, there's no bars above 100 kW, it's eligible. So even if it's owned by a larger company, a meter, an account can be eligible for small business program. And why does that matter? More money. It was designed for small businesses to give them more of a boost, more help in getting these projects done. And of course, saving money from the energy efficiency, but also like higher quality lighting, more comfort because of better, not only more efficient, but more comfortable HVAC delivery. So that's, I feel, important to know about. There's an application process for our incentives. I'm not going to go through all this. You've been through enough process stuff, and you're not going to need to know this. Just awareness of it to help in, say, due diligence for contract and project management. You're not going to need to go through this because the utility of the whoever your contractor is, the service providers who are signed up for the program, they know it. And so if there's a project where someone's not mentioning our Pepco or Delmarva Power or other utility incentives, it's a question to ask. It's a question to have on your list for due diligence. And again, our account executives are there to support those folks as well, to identify the best incentives, the most appropriate for the projects. And as mentioned earlier by Joe, we're really after deep dive, as much deep dive projects as possible. Prescriptive program, the next slide. Oh, shoot. Well, sorry, I didn't say next slide. So this was the portfolio. And this is the application process. You have to roll with me a little bit. My memory's a little off. So prescriptive program, lighting projects have traditionally been the most common. This is replacing something with a new efficient version and getting a certain amount of incentive rebated to you. So lighting, the common low-hanging fruit, but the market is showing signs of saturation, but there's still opportunity, big savings in especially outdoor, but indoor as well, especially like warehouses, still office buildings, parking lots and garages, other warehouses, production facilities, wherever there's a big old light, you can replace it with a small LED light and lots of savings there. Always a quick payback, great return on investment there. So that's the standard thing, but lighting controls really need to be lumped in there in the same sentence whenever saying lighting upgrades. Very important and will become more heavily incentivized. I always say doing a lighting project without controls is a lost opportunity. If there's no extenuating circumstances, always talk about it at least. And then there's various other types of equipment, and you've seen these on other slides from previous presenters. Next slide, please. Here's a summary of the options with the retro commissioning program. It's commonly known as building tune-up. That's how it all started, was that word, and then retro commissioning came along and more all-encompassing. So we'll get into some of these in more detail, but regarding the bottom tile, virtual commissioning, this program was new as of 2023. It's fully remote consulting service for buildings with building control. So mostly it's marketed by searching usage data. The contractor identifies big savings opportunities and then offers a service to that customer, business, what have you. But customers can also request it. And so it expects an average of about 10% efficiency gains from scheduling and other simple adjustments based on the building's current occupancy profile. And that's a common issue, especially after effects of COVID times. Scheduling's all messed up, occupancy, it's all different, but yet it hasn't been updated as far as controlling the HVAC. Next slide. The building tune-up program awards 25 cents per annual kilowatt hour saved, up to 85% of the project. And the big news is it's can pay up to $200,000 for a single building. So serious money there. $300,000 for a multiple building project, and buildings greater than 75,000 square feet do need to have a energy management system. It doesn't have to have direct digital controls, but it has to have an EMS, and also a higher than average energy use intensity. So a few stipulations, but it applies to many of the medium and larger buildings. Monitoring-based commissioning is where the money is. The most money is, and there's money there to help with energy audits. And it's otherwise very lucrative. It has multiple benefits. Really highly recommend looking at that first as the first path to start with. See if it's right for your building, and then go to simpler paths such as standard building tune-up as needed, and go from there. There's an 8-page guidance manual for building tune-up and monitoring-based commissioning that's a great resource to quickly kind of identify what's right for your building. Next slide. This is about training. We provide rebates, incentives for your facility staff to get trained. Normally it's up to $1,000, but we have a limited time offer going through the rest of this year. As long as you get your name in, basically up to $3,500, including any testing, that's new. And the reason for this limited time offer is because we have the budget available, but more importantly, it's to get those deeper dive trainings and certifications, such as Certified Energy Manager. That's an excellent certification, but there's a list of kind of pre-screened trainings online, but you can submit your own idea. Idea meaning, identify what training is going to be important for you as a facility manager or your facility managers, and it's likely going to get approved, and then you're in. Okay, next slide. Small business. Again, remember the misnomer here. Small business is really small account. Low energy use staying below 100 kW. Again, there's more higher incentives for these accounts. Oftentimes house accounts that may just serve exterior lighting are eligible for this. So that's a real gem. Lots of energy and cost savings there. Next slide is the custom program for new construction and longer term projects. It's more involved and comprehensive, requires more data, verified energy savings. So there's an energy model to start off with, and then measurement verification, M&V, afterwards for all projects, and it pays really well. So anything that doesn't fit into one of the other buckets can be done here, or if you're with a sophisticated, experienced consultant, a service provider who uses our incentive programs, it can also be kind of tested out to see if that's more money through custom, or you get more money through prescriptive, building tune-up, et cetera. And prescriptive, oftentimes people think, just small things, being replaced, like lighting, it's a fixture, gets replaced. But we're talking big chillers as well. And equipment that supports it, and HVAC in general, variable frequency drives, et cetera. So that gets quite large. Next slide, we have, because of that change I mentioned earlier, now we have electrification incentives. So this is new as of mid-year. And next slide, some examples. So new opportunities are available. And again, it can benefit from not only electrification, but dual fuel. And actually dual fuel pays really well as well. So there is flexibility for the various options. As you know, every building is different. The HVAC systems, water systems, et cetera, are different. So again, opportunities, talking to the right people can dial you in to the best opportunities for you. So midstream HVAC, midstream is basically instant discount from the distributor that you're buying from, air source heat pumps, various other heat pumps, even cooking appliances. There's custom projects. We do heat pump chillers, various even process energy can be dealt with. And then I mentioned dual fuel and even building shell improvements that can be done also by custom right now. Next slide, please. So we also encourage layering other funding sources on top of Pepco's incentives to enable really broader scopes of work, that deep dive that I mentioned earlier. Here's some examples that are relevant to the greater market. Some may be limited for federal agencies, but there are, say, Montgomery County has also been a leader, and they've been like the first county in the country to establish a building energy performance standard, BEPS, and they back it up with support. So, for instance, a federal facility there can do a deep dive energy project and get a very large property tax credit for a number of years. So, and scale-wise, I'll say, talk about a small office building, say 4 to 6 stories tall. There's an example of this having $200,000 property tax credit a year. So that's good business right there. They also have, the Montgomery County Green Bank has a technical assistance project, program, technical assistance, but also some subsidies. So for energy auditing, I think they provide up to $8,000, like our program, our monitoring-based commissioning program does. Design assistance, et cetera. So the locality is another place to look. But these weaving of layered incentives really add together for fabulous opportunities. And I'm mentioning this, we actually have and there's a link to the Pepco webpage linked up there to our additional funding sources page is a great resource. I actually created a whole presentation that's more of a reference document about all the opportunities available. And with the transferability of tax credits for federal tax credits, you can transfer those to designers and contractors of your projects. And in essence, that gets passed on to you as savings. So things to think about, and this is a great page to go to give you some links to opportunities. Not all will be, again, applicable to federal agencies, but a lot. Next slide. So here's a visual of that, various financial programs, federal, our Empower Maryland utility program, state level grants and loans, really fantastic. Maryland Energy Administration does a great job. local, I mentioned Montgomery County, other counties, and private sector energy efficiency specialty loans. There's small and large lenders that pay a lot of attention to this. They want to invest because it's a smart investment. And there's also the tax equity market. So there's trading platforms. One was started by the previous chief of staff of Janet Yellen, called Crux Climate, and this facilitates the whole process of you're doing a project, you've got all these future tax credits lined up. You can sell those for capital now, and it's only like 90 to 96 cents on the dollar, I think. So you're getting most of it, but you're getting a source of upfront capital. So very, very creative things going on. There's innovations in technologies and innovations in the financial sector. You're probably familiar with DOE's Financing Navigator, and I'm really excited about FEMP's utility program Navigator. Project examples, this is a small federal project, $9,700 incentive. It saves $35,000 per year. An example of a really large project is the most current one at National Archives, mostly HVAC controls, 80 to 90% complete right now, and the incentive is over $1 million. Going back to NASA's Goddard Space Center, riffing off of Joe's examples, big and small projects have been done here. These are some of the projects in the last 3 years. Joe's slide said total $3 million of incentives. Last year, there was over $1 million just within that year. So as you can see, incentives ranging from $2,500 to $380,000. A small one being the drinking fountain cooling timers. Never would have thought of that. $2,400. I'm sorry. The incentive was $4,200, and the chiller replacement was $561,000. So the whole gamut. And that, I'm sure you're all curious about the payback for the water cooling timers, right? Yes, I see a lot of hands going up. Virtually. And 3.5 years payback. So who would have thunk it? I would not have. Next slide, please. And for demand response, I'm going to pass it over to Joe Cohen right here. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I guess I'll do a quick time check, right? We have, I'll try to wrap it up real quick. All right. So the PGM, I will say, obviously, for demand response, Pepco does offer a demand response program. Basically, it's a load control switch on, say, an HVAC, but it really is only geared to our small commercial customers. So for those in the large load customers, obviously we don't offer this program, but we do have, PGM does offer a DR offering. And, obviously, for a lot of our federal customers, I'm sure trying to find ways to reduce demand charges are certainly probably top of mind. And this is a great opportunity to do so. So for those facilities, where you can reduce at certain, obviously, peak times with sort of minimal disruptions to operations, this is a great opportunity. One, because you could potentially lower, peak demand and the peak demand charges, but then get also a revenue source back by participating. And I think Jeff made a point is usually it's about you get called maybe a day or two before, letting you know when the event potentially is going to occur, or when there's high prices, wholesale energy prices to reduce. And obviously, again, this is money back into your pockets if you're able to participate, and obviously does a huge service to the grid. I'll just end by this saying is, again, we talked a lot about AI and low growth. I think it was actually Exelon's most recent earnings call. Our CEO said that within Exelon, which obviously has multiple different operating companies, there's about 33 gigawatts worth of data center load that is not just potential, but is likely to be interconnected. And to compare that, the whole Pepco zone is only 6 gigawatts. So that shows you really that massive scale there. And so a program like this obviously is going to be really key, for maintaining grid stability in the future. Let's turn over any questions, I guess, before Rick.
I got one more.
Oh, you got one more.
Yeah. No worries. Thanks, Joe, for that. Another tool in the toolbox, another item on the menu, so to speak, to choose from, and to be aware of as you're speaking to your contractors. All those other funding sources, just send the contractors to that webpage, or I can send you my comprehensive presentation. It's also on my LinkedIn page. So just so there's a contact information along with what I promised Dave Lowe and Will Johnson's contact information. There's links in the PDF to a quick reference sheet with all the programs on it. There you go. So that's just a quick visual. Go ahead and go back one. And then also links for the landing pages for the business incentive programs right here. So with that, I'll wrap it up. And if there are any quick questions, because I'm tight on time. Great. All right. Well, thanks all for being. Oh, you have a question?
I was just wondering if you two, I don't know if this is for both of you, could you potentially speak to how?
Good news.
Hello?
I'm going to eat healthy.
Someone
Doctor says it's like medicine.
Someone needs to mute themselves, or the moderator needs to find them?
Yeah, I'm trying to find them. Okay.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I was just wondering if you guys could speak to how sort of the incentives that you were talking about fit into the UESC model. So, I mean, they're not either or, right? So then the incentives, Pepco, you work together to make sure that the project is capturing all the incentives that they have available to them, correct?
Yeah.
So that those two are sort of tied together. I think even the Goddard example you were showing, those were actually part of a UESC, right?
That's right. Yeah. And Constellation was a big contractor on that project, but we were primary.
So facility would come to you as they're developing out and have this discussion, and you sort of do that analysis for them. They don't have to know all the ins and outs of the individual programs.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I was trying to emphasize, be aware of the possibilities so you can ask the right questions, make sure there is no stone unturned. All right, thanks. Thanks for the question, and thanks for y'all being here. Been a pleasure.
All right, thanks, Tom. Thanks, Joe. All right, next up, we have from DC Sustainable Energy, we have Crystal McDonald, the Director, Account Management and Workforce Development, and we have Michael Ann Serbo, Lead Engineering Consultant.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I think, no, still good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invitation to Pepco and FEMP. Thank you for having us. It's nice to see some familiar faces from my 30-year career in the energy sector. I started my career at Pepco, and I've circled pretty much, literally, served at Exelon in Chicago for a little bit, came back and served at the U.S. Department of Energy, and now I call myself an implementer with the district's DC Sustainable Energy Utility. So we are happy to be here and share with you what we offer here in.
Like just
Battery died.
It's critical. Yes, it is. Thank you. So we are happy to be here and share with you what we offer here in within the district footprint and how we serve our federal customers. Next slide, please. So just to give you a heads up on what we will be covering, give you a little bit more information about the DC Sustainable Energy Utility. We'll talk about customer engagement with the federal agencies over the past 10 years or so, pathways to incentives and technical support. We'll talk, we're not going to really cover too much around building energy performance standards, but that does exist here in the district. But I don't think the federal buildings are subject to that, but we do advise you to take a look at the guidance. Business rebates, custom incentives, a little bit more about our Pay for Performance program, and of course, we are open to questions. So, next slide. The District of Columbia Sustainable Energy Utility, we're a community-minded organization committed to making energy efficiency and clean energy more accessible to every person and business in the district. Our parent organization is VEIC, which has a very deep bench of technical expertise. And so we've been operating here in the district since 2011. We have served the district residents and businesses, generating more than $1.4 billion in lifetime energy cost savings. We also provide industry-leading learning opportunities. I do cover that space for our capacity building programs for both contractors as well as individuals through our workforce development programs. We also offer hands-on assistance and vital financial support that save our communities both energy and money. Next slide, please. For over a decade, the DCSU has partnered with federal agencies in DC to achieve energy and cost savings. We have incentivized energy efficient equipment and provided technical assistance for new construction and retrofit projects. Our projects in federally owned and operated buildings include lighting upgrades, controls, and all the other measures you've seen listed here today. Most of the projects have a 5 to 10 year simple payback, but of course there are projects that offer a shorter payback and projects that offer a longer payback. The DCSU incentive is based on estimated annual electric savings in megawatt hours and natural gas savings in MMBTUs. The lifetime energy cost saved is based on estimated cost savings for installed measures. We have worked directly with agencies, with the ESCOs and consultants to support operational efficiencies and other O&M measures that enhance building energy performance. Next slide. For this audience, we'll just focus on two of the pathways that we deliver, where we deliver incentives and technical assistance. So we have a self-service approach that's usually, we call that the Business Energy Rebate Program. And that's like a shopping basket experience. And Michael Ann will talk a little bit more about that. And then of course we have our custom service pathway. And we'll do a little deeper dive in that, explaining the options under our custom service. We offer support for, like I said before, retrofit projects, new construction, and then of course, pay for performance offering. And so with that said, I'd like to bring up one of our lead engineers, Michael Ann Skirbo.
Thanks, Crystal. So as Crystal was saying, I'll talk a little bit about how to engage with our programs. If you could go to the next slide. So if you're in Maryland, you would go to Empower for your local rebates. But if you're in DC, you're going to DCSU for your local district rebates. And as Crystal was saying, for standard rebates for federal buildings, you'll go to the dcsu.com/business rebates page. That's where you'll find our standard prescriptive rebates. A lot of these measures have been kind of mentioned before through other programs, but what you can find are lighting measures for certain lighting equipment, certain HVAC equipment, VFDs up to 15 horsepower, certain refrigeration, commercial refrigeration equipment. And then if you work with some of our listed distributors, you can also get instant rebates, like point of sale rebates for certain lighting and certain HVAC equipment. Would you mind going to the next slide? Okay, but if the equipment that you're working with is not listed on our business rebate page, then we have our custom incentives program that can support, a wide variety of energy saving measures. Examples include, extensive lighting and controls upgrades, chillers upgrades, large motors with large motors with VFDs over 15 horsepower, steam trap replacements, even transformer replacements, or any sort of controls upgrades that save energy, like optimal start or demand control ventilation. And so there's a long list of measures that are eligible for incentives. I think the key thing to keep in mind is that in the custom program, the dollar amount for the incentive is tied to the actual energy savings, and that's why it's called custom. We're here to help talk through what level of incentive we can offer depending on the measure. There are a couple ways to reach out to us. You could complete the custom project form on our website. Please reach out to an account manager, or you can call us at the number listed here. So if you find yourself managing a new construction or retrofit project, please reach out. You can go to the next slide, please. So just to give an idea of what engaging with us looks like, there's an identifying opportunity stage where we can walk through which measures are eligible for incentives based on what you're considering. And DCSU also offers support like facilitating roundtables to have peer-to-peer conversations or seminars on new technologies. Then there's the savings analysis stage where we make an energy savings estimate and we collect information on your equipment, your operations. That savings estimate is tied to the incentive level. And then lastly, there's demonstrating the impact. So you already have support from FEMP, which is awesome. You know, if you're ever trying to make the case to your team on the benefits of investing in a particular measure, we're also here if you need another neutral party, a local voice to talk about the benefits. There's primarily utility bill savings, as you all know, but there can also be a reduced maintenance cost or increased occupant comfort, benefits to indoor air quality, things like that. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Is there a slide on, let's see, regarding pay for performance or no? If not, I can just talk through it.
I do not.
Okay, do you mind going just back to the previous slide? Sorry about that. I'll just quickly talk through pay for performance if that's okay. So if you've worked with us before, then you probably know that for a new construction or most retrofit projects, we make an energy savings estimate prediction and then using best practice assumptions. And then after the equipment is installed and operational, we do an inspection and we issue a rebate. I just want to call out the pay for performance program because it operates a little bit differently. It sounds like it might be similar to what Tom was describing in terms of the monitor-based commissioning program at Empower. In pay for performance, we're actually paying for the energy saved that we'll see literally on the utility bill. So it's a longer term program to participate in. In pay for performance, we still need to know like what types of measures you're doing because we need to determine if it's possible to see those energy savings estimates in the data. Smaller measures might not be a great fit for pay for performance because it's harder to see in the data. And we'll also need to always do an inspection to see if the measures are installed. So in pay for performance, we establish a baseline. We look at your historical utility data. Then there's an implementation period, and then there's a performance period, and we compare the performance period to the baseline period, and we see what actual energy was saved. The P4P program is a good tool when there are complex measures that we can't easily estimate in our custom program, or uncommon measures that really haven't been studied a lot before, or even a set of bundled measures that have a lot of interactive effects. It's less common to see P4P for federal buildings because often your projects are coming to us with a very thorough energy audit, which is awesome. Gives us a lot of details to work with in terms of predicting energy savings, but I want to make sure you're aware of P4P as a tool at our programs as well. And I guess I'll turn it back to Crystal now.
Yeah, so hopefully, I think we're probably missing a few slides and we'll get those into the final slide deck. But I do want to bring your attention to Corey Chimka. He's our senior account manager serving most of the federal buildings here in the district. You all may be familiar with him. On one of the slides, we have a QR code to book some time with Corey. So I do advise you to take advantage of definitely engaging with the DC Sustainable Energy Utility. And so with that said, I think that's all we'll deliver today, but you can always visit our website and contact Corey for more information. Thank you all for your time today.
Okay, thanks, Crystal. Thanks, Michael Ann. And next, we have a resiliency panel looking at Pepco Smart Grid and Innovation and Strategy teams. So moderating that will be Will Ellis, Director of External Affairs. And our panelists will be Gabby Levinson, Manager of Smart Grid Programs, Jacob Berlin, Manager of Strategic Programs, Clean Energy Strategy, Eric Moberg, Manager Strategic Programs, Clean Energy Strategy. We'll set some chairs up here real quick.
Great. Yeah. Yes. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. It may not be working. All right, here we go. Here we go. All right, as I said, I'm William Ellis, the Director of Governmental and External Affairs. Welcome to PHI's headquarters at Edison Place. Really excited to be moderating the panel with you all today on enabling resiliency. I have a great group of experts with me that will be helping me with this panel. You know, as society becomes more dependent on grid services, reliability and resiliency is a increasingly important topic for our customers and communities. Unlike resiliency, which focuses on providing power consistently over a sustained period of time, reliability really specifically addresses our system's capacity to be able to, you know, bounce back, recover, anticipate, and withstand extreme events. So creating resilient solutions is so important for our customers as well as our communities as we continue to face these risks of extreme weather, cybersecurity attack, man-made attacks, and other opportunities. So as I ask my panelists to introduce themselves, I'm going to also ask you if you could just highlight one aspect of resiliency, maybe it's a technology that you all are excited about in addressing some of the challenges we face in terms of increasing resiliency for our customers today. Jacob. Sure.
So good afternoon, everyone. Jacob Berlin. I manage the policy and strategy team for Pepco, for Maryland and the district. And so my team, you know, generally is focused on working with our external stakeholders as well as our regulatory bodies in terms of as they're working through and advancing policies and regulation and supporting that effort and seeing where there's opportunities to partner with stakeholders to advance different solutions. And in terms of your question, in terms of what excites me about resiliency and different technologies, I think, you know, storage is and we'll talk a lot about it, is a very flexible device. And I think there's a lot of different avenues and ways that can be used to provide resiliency for customers and to the grid in ways that can be leveraged in partnership to accomplish that in both situations.
Good afternoon, everyone. Eric Moberg. So also on the Clean Energy Strategy team. The team and I support strategic program development, so kind of downstream of policy and regulatory strategy. We support the cross-functional program development within our organization and with external stakeholders. So once we either have an order or develop something organically, we take that, run it across our business to develop the most beneficial for both a customer and a grid perspective programs that we can develop, file with our commission, and strive towards positive regulatory outcomes. To your question, Will, probably building on what you said a little bit, Jacob, I think battery storage is certainly a hot topic and something from a resiliency perspective that primarily is used to support in times of outages or other extreme weather events. I think that as we look forward in these innovative programs that are coming that we'll speak about a little bit about here shortly, the opportunity for customers, federal government customers, other customers to be direct participants in grid reliability, leveraging your resources to provide value to the system, I think is something that's very innovative and very attractive and something that we hope to grow and build from a PHI perspective.
And I'll round us out. Can you guys hear me? Yes. And I'll round us out here. So good afternoon, everyone. Gabby Levinson. I'm the manager of our smart grid programs. So we manage all of the opportunity development and portfolio management of what I'll call our grid edge innovation projects, our pilot and demonstrations that support resiliency, reliability, and other grid services for Pepco and as well DPL and ACE that are our sister territories. We are, I'd say, probably the third in this string here, where Eric's team will put together the filing and work cross-functionally across all the groups in the company, and then my team will implement. Typically design what a pilot or a demonstration might look like, whether that's a battery, a VPP, et cetera. And then we have an execution team who is not here, but they take what my team puts together and actually gets it in the ground. To address your question on resiliency, I might get a couple looks from my colleagues over here, but I'm going to say I'm excited about the potential for virtual power plants. They are not, I don't know how to say this, but they are not particularly effective yet. We're getting there. We're really, really close. There's some really exciting opportunities with Green Mountain Power that's going on, and I think it's something that we're looking at too. We've got some legislation that's asked us to do so we're putting together some information, but leveraging the behind-the-meter resources, such as what might be at one of your sites, can be very beneficial to the overall impact on grid services that we have and that we need to implement.
Well, thank you all for that. As you all can see, we have some of the brightest within our company up on this panel. So please get your questions ready. I'll start and we'll start with you, Jacob. You mentioned battery storage. Please tell us about some of the initiatives that Pepco is embarked on related to battery storage, as well as how can those initiatives impact our federal customers?
Sure, and I'll start with some of the context with storage in terms of where Maryland and the district are in terms of what they're pursuing with storage. So Maryland, for example, has a goal by 2034 to install 3,000 megawatts of energy storage in the state. DC currently does not have a goal, but DOEE is actively driving work groups that several of us and our teams are participating in to try and figure out what does storage look like in the district? Should they have goals? What should those goals look like? So they're a little bit kind of, I'll say, behind Maryland in that way in terms of trying to establish those pieces. So that kind of sets the frame of what is happening in the landscape. And so where does Pepco fit into that? I think, focusing mainly on Maryland, given that they do have those legislative goals and they're actively working on it. Two areas I'll highlight. One is actually something that came down through legislation this year. Eric's team is currently driving a cross-functional team to develop it, which is a procurement process. So the Maryland, as part of the legislation this year, directed utilities to file procurement programs for 150 megawatts across the state of that 3,000 for distribution connected storage. Some combination of utility owned and third party owned. And so we are actively developing that filing now and developing kind of what our strategic approach is going to be for those, for procuring storage to meet those goals. The second thing I'll highlight is also connected to that, which is the state really views those procurement as a short-term approach to energy storage, where the state, I think, ultimately is trying to go is to establish utility tariffs around energy storage. So customers would be able to either develop a storage device or bring a storage device to some type of program where we just have a set tariff that customers would be able to provide a grid service to the grid and we would then compensate that accordingly. And so that work's still more in development. That's currently in the work group phase. I expect that to be coming more into fruition next year or the year after, where utilities will actually be establishing those tariffs and bring that forward. So what does all that mean for the federal government and all of you here today? I think a couple of things. One, there's certainly the opportunities as you're thinking about storage devices, and I think it was mentioned in one of the previous slides. Are there opportunities as we're looking to procure storage to have different levels of partnership in terms of siting and siting utility-owned storage at some of those sites that can benefit both parties and create some of those partnerships? And then the second thing I would say is as we look towards those tariffs and having some of those grid services more openly available, a key component of storage and one of the key benefits of it is it's a very flexible device, right? It can charge and discharge whenever is needed or is used. And what that allows then is the ability to kind of, the term you hear a lot is called value stacking. And so being able to use the same device for multiple benefits or multiple values. And so as you all are thinking about resiliency for your locations and establishing that resiliency for you as a customer, there's opportunities to stack grid benefits and grid services using that same device on top of that, right? And so that would then create a revenue stream for that battery, for the customer, and being able to then provide benefits both to you, the customer, via that resiliency, as well as benefits to the grid, either through resiliency for us or other use cases that we're able to identify through those grid services. So I think as those programs come to fruition and start to become established, I think there's real opportunities there to marry both those resiliency opportunities with some of those grid services that we'll be looking to offer once that's established.
Thanks, Jacob. And I think you hit on a very important point that I want Gabby to kind of weigh in on. You talked about the framework in terms of where are our states as well as the district in terms of goals for battery storage, as well as the framework and terms that are being able to be set up to make it happen. Gabby, could you speak to some of our partnerships and how you implement that through pilot programs that you oversee?
And as I go through this, if you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to kind of like pause us, raise your hand. This is supposed to be very collaborative and an open discussion, so don't hesitate to do that. I have some notes here because I'm going to get into a few details, so please take that for what you will. I think what's important here is that Jacob mentioned earlier that there is an energy storage pilot program in Maryland. So we've done about we've had 4 opportunities to participate, 2 in Pepco and 2 in Delmarva. I'm going to talk just briefly about 3 of those. And then if you have questions and want to go into the details more, please let me know. But first we have our Brookville Bus Depot. So we partnered with Alpha Structure, the developer, and Montgomery County, Maryland, public schools, Montgomery County, to set up a microgrid bus depot. Oh yes, okay, you'll see it. A microgrid bus depot. So the bus depot really helped us defer what would have been a capital expansion project for one of our feeders. And the bus depot itself is actually net zero, right? So it doesn't require any energy from us in order to function. There are there's a battery energy storage system. There is let me see if I can make sure I get the capacity correct here. So there is a 6 megawatt microgrid, which is 2 megawatts of battery, 1.6 megawatts of solar, and then 633 kilowatts for 3 generators. Essentially, there are 70 buses that this is supposed to be able to serve. And as a third-party owned and operated system through Alpha Structure, the microgrid is able to serve all 70 of those buses at different times. So the other thing for this one that I'll mention is that at the time when this was built in 2022, not only did we have the capacity expansion deferrals that I mentioned earlier, but it was actually the largest microgrid in microgrid in the country. Since then, we're actually working on another one to date with MTOC, the Equipment Maintenance and Transit Operations Center. I can never remember what that stands for. And that one is actually now the biggest, and that's with Montgomery County as well. We're working through that. That one's not fully developed yet. So that's Brookville. One of the other ones I'll mention is our Elk Neck VPP. So this is not exactly battery storage in traditional sense where you have like a 1 megawatt battery energy storage system. A VPP is a virtual power plant. It leverages behind the meter batteries or other resources in order to pull from those resources and leverage it for grid services in several different ways. So Elk Neck, let me make sure I get these numbers correct for you. Elk Neck is a virtual power plant that we used as a non-wire solution. So basically means instead of using traditional infrastructure that we would have on a traditional utility project, we've been able to leverage what we call a non-wire solution, and that's this VPP. It's a non-traditional utility project to help with an issue that we're having. The purpose of this is really to provide not only resiliency to our customers, right, but also we were able to we're working on being able to participate in ancillary services in PJM market. The third party owned and operated model is for 110 behind the meter resources south of what is Elk Neck State Park. So Elk Neck State Park, if you know anything about it, basically sits at what I call the armpit of Maryland in our DPL region. And it is in an incredibly wooded, tree dense area. And the joke is, if you sneeze too hard, you went out of power, right? So our goal was, well, how do we actually fix that? And instead of those traditional wired solutions, right, where it's densely populated by different trees, we said, let's try a virtual power plant. And so that's in our Maryland pilot program. And it's funny because right after we stood this up in 2022, there was an event in July of 2022 where the batteries actually prevented an additional 25 hours of power outage across the DPL Maryland system, which is pretty cool. Yeah, that's good for that one. And I think those are the two that I wanted to highlight now that I think probably are just a good example of some of the partnerships we've been able to build over time.
Eric, you also mentioned the technology that you was excited about in terms of batteries, but I think you're doing a little bit on the mobile battery side, dealing with our transportation sector. Could you highlight sort of your thoughts on resiliency projects you're working on within the transportation sectors?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Will. Before I jump into kind of future-looking programs, did want to highlight all of the great program offerings that are available through Pepco, through PJM, and through the SEU in terms of opportunities to take advantage of today. These programs that Pepco designs are meant to be complementary to, with other funding sources, with contract vehicles that are available to the federal government. So ensure that you take advantage of those where applicable. And the complementary structure is built into things that we're looking at moving forward. So from a forward-looking perspective, Will, one thing when you refer to transportation, mobile batteries, the Maryland Commission ordered all of the Maryland utilities to develop VPPs through the DRIVE Act, which is the Distributed Renewable Integration in Vehicle Electrification. So within that pilot that we've been ordered to file, we have put forth a framework to enable and compensate the aggregation of both battery energy storage, but also vehicles, electric vehicles to provide grid service. So a lot of the grid services that Jacob mentioned, we're going to start analyzing and looking at this pilot to initially provide peak shaving, but long-term, this program is looked at to be the fundamentals behind how we stack grid values, both leveraging behind-the-meter battery storage, but also vehicles. I think vehicles bring a lot more to the table than a battery that sits behind the meter. Vehicles can plug in anywhere across the system. There's varying sizes of batteries from a vehicle perspective. So how we can unlock that value has additional values that just go beyond batteries that sit behind the meter. So I'm not sure if anyone tuned in yesterday. We had a hearing with the Public Service Commission on these, and we're hoping to see a positive order in the near term. Or we can then deploy that pilot to allow customers to leverage their batteries and vehicles to provide grid service that we then compensate you with. A couple other things, one thing specific to electric vehicle transportation is in Maryland, we filed our phase 2 of electric vehicle programs back in December, had a hearing in April, and are hoping for a positive outcome in the near term related to incentives we can offer to cover the make-ready work associated with varying different types of end uses of electric vehicles. Currently, in line with that, we do have a fleet program offering. So for customers that are considering electrification of their fleets, we do currently offer a program to support and offset costs associated with that construction. Jacob did a great job touching on the Maryland Energy Storage Program. And I'll just touch on from the DC side of the house. We were, is it every 3 years, Climate Solutions Plan, we're ordered to deliver a refreshed look at how can Pepco support the district in achieving its climate and resiliency goals. We are currently developing that, and I believe that is due October 31st. That plan consists of 4 major sectors, being electrification, transportation, building decarbonization, achieving or unlocking the local energy ecosystem, and enhancing infrastructure for climate solutions. So what we're putting forward in that document is what I'll call a menu of offerings the district can look at and order or ask Pepco to develop programs to support not only federal government customers, but all of our customers. So hopefully in the near term, we'll have direction on which programs they see as most advantageous that we can develop program frameworks for to deliver to our customers. And then I'll end with kind of across both our Maryland and DC portfolios, we have a distribution system planning, which I'll allow Jacob to touch on.
Yeah, touching on distribution system planning briefly. So this is an effort going on, both in Maryland and DC, and it's really all about how are we really focusing on our forward planning processes? How are we, engaging stakeholders in those forward planning processes? And I think, Gabby talked a little bit about how we've leveraged some of these opportunities and technologies to solve non-wire solutions and different system constraints that we're having. And I think these distribution system planning processes that'll be coming about, that'll be more transparent, more kind of open and engaging stakeholders and third parties really creates an opportunity for some of those partnerships as we identify some of those constraints on our system and start to bring them forward, opportunities for us to see where those partnerships exist with you all in terms of bringing forward some solutions that could help address them. And again, driving some of those mutual benefits for both you as the customers as well as for the grid as well. So both of those are kind of ongoing still and being defined, but I would expect over the next couple of years for those processes to really start to be established and seeing that play out.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Jacob. I'm gonna come back to you, Jacob. You touched a little bit on value stacking. And so hopefully there's some questions coming from those that are in the room, but I want to get a sense of why should our federal partners care related to battery storage? So what are the benefits you see in terms of that value stacking that they can participate in to make it more cost effective or more beneficial for those partners?
Sure. I mean, I think obviously it starts with the resiliency, right? And that is a certain clear value and opportunity as the customer to be able to get from that energy storage. Eric had mentioned, some of those use cases that we were moving forward with drives specifically around peak shaving, and the idea there really, and it's been mentioned kind of throughout, is some of those higher capacity prices that we see ultimately have impacts to all customers and the rates that customers are paying. And so how can we use and leverage some of these devices to address the peak of the system, right? And the obligation that we're seeing within PJM that therefore creates some value for customers, as that's going to be reducing, some of those overall costs that customers are seeing. And so those are two kind of easy, quick examples to see. I think other examples then connect to different things like microgrids. How can it potentially connect with solar as well in terms of enabling additional solar generation on the system? So those are all different values that I think create value to the grid, right? And those are then potentially ways that as the grid operator, as we see some of those benefits, able to then compensate and provide compensation for those grid services that are provided, and ultimately then hopefully being able to create, savings then for the customers that are providing savings for customers overall, but certainly then, savings for the customers that are providing those grid values.
Can I add something really quickly? So I had talked about our Elk Neck VPP virtual power plant for a little bit. I think this is a really good example of value stacking. So originally we had designed it to be resilient, right, for a resilient and reliable grid for our for our customers. But we also inherently added 2 more functions that we're still working to deploy. But one is system load relief, right, from like when there is excessive or higher demand on the grid, we can actually call on these resources and lower the system load, right? That's one benefit. The second benefit is actually, and I briefly mentioned it, but I'll say ancillary market participation, so that our customers can actually participate in PJM's market and get compensated, like Jacob was mentioning earlier about it. So that's 3 different use cases. I think it's a really great example of value stacking. We're still working on getting a couple of them figured out, but inherently that is what value stacking is.
We have a question.
Wanted to ask, sort of building on what you're already talking about, do you have some examples of what kind of like equipment types or space types, like how would a federal customer know that they're a good candidate for batteries? Like, is it mostly like peak charges in the cooling season or something else that might indicate, oh, your building's probably a good candidate?
Do you have any thoughts?
So I think, thinking back to a couple of our opportunities here and some of the past experiences, I'm not going to say that there is a particular capacity or load requirement associated with that. I think it's very much dependent on what I'll call the critical mission, right? If you have a particular mission that your organization focuses on that really just can't be without power, right? Like there's some sort of criticality to it. Storage is a great option for that, because it can really just provide that, that additional duration, that storage requirement that you may need. I think that probably, in my opinion, is the most helpful. But also, if you work with Pepco, for example, we can also say, you know what, you're actually in an area where we might be coming up in the next couple of years on feeder constraint, right, from a capacity perspective. And you're a great candidate because you actually take up, 1 megawatt of the 10 megawatt feeder for whatever reason, right? And if we can bring that down because you guys got a battery, that helps us, right? I mean, it helps you, obviously, but it also helps us.
I'll just add a bit too. As we think value stacking and exploring different grid services through the VPP pilot, through other avenues, through what other utilities are doing across the country, I think today it really starts with kind of the mission criticality you said, Gabby, of having a need to have a storage unit or storage system on site to support the mission or to support the data or whatever piece of information you need to always have online. As more and more grid services are explored, I think there'll be more value that the battery can be leveraged for from a grid perspective, from a market perspective. I think that'll come with time. A lot of utilities across the country are diving and beginning to further explore this, as we will begin to do as well. So I think today it starts with that resiliency need, but moving forward, I think it could look a lot different.
Touching back on your statement, Gabby, around drivers and capacity issues, I would suspect as our federal partners look to electrify more of their buildings or even their transportation fleet, Eric, that there may be system upgrades that could be offset by the use of batteries or other technology. So just your thoughts in general around how does this opportunity for batteries help to leverage sort of different value options for that customer?
I'll dig back into my large customer services days, and a mantra that we always, you've probably heard from your account managers, is to always contact the utility as soon as you have an idea, as soon as you have a project concept. And I think that rings very true here. If you have an innovative concept that you want to test, you want to explore, we're all ears in helping you plan, helping you understand the system capacity, system potential constraint at your location or across multiple facilities. And we're always, want to be involved in how we can perhaps look at a more cost-effective solution versus your kind of traditional poles and wires. So I would just encourage, maintain consistent communication with your account manager or the utility and to ensure that we can provide the information to help you make informed decisions.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Will, because as buildings electrify and folks get additional, electric vehicles on the grid, like the demand is going to go up. You're not wrong, right? And so our capacity planning team, the ones that, generally plan for our system. They're well aware, they're doing models, they're running this stuff. But if you want to offset some of your electrification load through a battery, if you want to offset it using a microgrid capability, those are great uses right there, right? So you can offset your own load in some capacity. I said some capacity, but I didn't mean capacity. So hopefully that helped to answer that a little bit too.
Any more questions? It'd be good just to talk, either one of you all, some of the differences in use cases between sort of a microgrid or a VPP. We've been hearing those terms a lot within this panel discussion. So any thoughts in terms of, I know some of our federal partners have multiple campuses, multiple buildings, and how those terminology and use cases would be different, or any particular solutions we offer that would be different for those customers.
I took your first step and then pass along. So I've already talked a little bit about VPPs, but virtual power plant, right? It leverages the behind the meter resources. They're disaggregated, right? So you could have a home, I'll put batteries on both of them, and then I'll aggregate that entire load and bring it back, right? So multiple points of interconnection. I think that's important to know. A microgrid is different. A microgrid is a single point of interconnection, and it may have multiple behind the meter resources. So I think microgrids come in handy when you're trying to island, right? If the rest of the grid goes down, how does your building or your campus continue to operate? I think that's important. Whereas a VPP, I would say it's a little bit more on the smaller scale, right? Like, yes, you could leverage, suppose if you really wanted, you could leverage different microgrids for a VPP. Wow, we're getting down a rabbit hole there. But typically VPPs are on the smaller side, I'll say, with like those Tesla power pack walls and things like that. And a microgrid probably has maybe solar and storage in a larger capacity involved in that. So that's the difference. And then I'd say, like I said, from a use case perspective, islanding, right? Or offsetting your own load. I think microgrids are great for that. There is an opportunity to offset your own load with a VPP as well, depending on, what behind the meter resources you have at your home. Okay.
All right, I'll close this out with one more. Oh, we have a question?
You hear me? Is this on? Okay. Well, first off, I just wanted to emphasize, I think this discussion really highlights how beneficial it can be to work with utilities on large scale energy projects at your site, and like the insights into the local grid that maybe another contractor wouldn't necessarily have. So Gabby highlighted that, you're aware if a facility might be at more higher risk for outages. That may not be an insight that another contractor can bring, and it's really vital if you're doing, these large scale investments. But I also just wanted to ask, in terms of, if I was a facility that was interested in participating in one of these projects, it sounds like there were some pilots, and then there's maybe some tariffs and stuff that are coming out in the future. How do I guess, learn about these opportunities? Is it just through like having discussions with you all, or is there a place on the website or somewhere that they would be able to stay up to date on, participating in a VPP when that comes along, or anything else?
You can start.
I mean, I think there's probably a couple avenues, and certainly looking for them to weigh in. Certainly, obviously, any account reps are a great way to make that connection and get that information. I think we work well internally to make sure they're understanding all those opportunities that exist for the customers. And I think, especially as we start to move towards some of the tariffs or programs, I can't say for certain, but I would expect much of that will also be making its way onto our website in different avenues. I'll use our EV programs, for example. Eric talked, we had filed phase 2. Therefore, there was a phase 1. All of our phase 1 EV programs were on our website for customers to be able to get more information, have contact information. So certainly use those account reps as they're available, but I would expect as these come out in the non-pilot versions, but more programmatic or tariff versions, that there's also going to be information on our website about those opportunities.
And as far as pilots go, I think Jacob was kind of hit it, they're pilots. And so we may not be broadcasting them as widely because we're trying to get the learnings from them so that we then can broadcast them widely and then inherently say, you know what, XYZ org, we've noticed you're approaching I don't know, something's happening over there, right? And we're here to help. How can we help you? We've had this, and this experience. And so we've now done battery energy storage systems a couple times. We've got one in Beach Haven, New Jersey as well. We've got one in Ocean City, Maryland, in addition to the Elk Neck. And then of course the Brookville bus system, bus depot, that I mentioned earlier. And a lot of times, for example, the Elk Neck one is on PJM's website. And then Brookville is on the Montgomery County website. So typically it's with our partners that are able to do that. I do know occasionally we'll send out stuff to our customers that say, hey, guess what? This new cool thing happened. Doesn't happen as often as maybe we'd like, but it definitely does happen.
I'll just add one last thing, Jeff. It's a great question. And as we develop and build programs, we are always interested in stakeholder perspectives. We do a lot of stakeholder outreach to understand how we can design these most effectively to ultimately benefit all of our customers. So maybe an opportunity to partner in pulling the federal government together in either a single channel or multiple channels as we build programs like the Climate Solutions Plan, like some of our other filings we're currently working on, to share what we're doing and hear feedback from you on how we can better improve them. So perhaps an opportunity we can talk about.
All right, I think we're at time, so please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists for today's discussion. So thank you, Jacob, Eric, and Gabby. Next, I think I have the pleasure of you're turning it back over to you.
Thank you so much. That was really, really great. All right, into our closeout. So before I hand the mic over to Chris Taylor, Director of Large Customer Services here at Pepco, I just want to, just from FEMP's perspective, really big, huge thanks to Pepco. I think this has been a really great event, really good information. Really appreciate your partnership now and going forward. And thanks to all the participants here in person and online. Really appreciate all your participation here. And just wanted to harp back onto Mary Sodos's comments at the beginning. If you have questions on any material here or anything in general, just reach out to FEMP and we're here to help. So appreciate it. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Chris. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, good afternoon. My name is Chris Taylor, the Director of Large Customer Services at PHI. We're almost to the end. I know we're going at it 3 hours now and lunch is close. And so we are in the final Q&A portion of the presentation today. So Dan and Joe are monitoring online. So if there's any questions online, feel free to drop those in now, as well as in the room. Just to close on one element from our side, we've talked a lot about resilience and reliability at your buildings and sites. We at Pepco are laser focused on reliability at the system as a whole as well. One really major important project that we are undertaking over the past several years is the Capital Grid project. This is one where we are taking care of a lot of needs within one project itself. And so back in about 2012, utility scale generation retired in the District of Columbia. And so Pepco really imports 100% of our power at a utility scale. And so traditionally, this has been through radial transmission corridors. We had about 4 corridors into the District of Columbia coming from a 500 kV ring. Through this Capital Grid project, we are now networking these radial lines. We essentially built a 10-mile underground transmission line through the District of Columbia. So we have multiple pathways of power in that transmission that supplies really all the District of Columbia. Another element that we have focused on with this Capital Grid project is building new substations at First and K Street. We also rebuilt substations in the Columbia Heights neighborhoods, Buzzard Point, and then we're actually embarking on this phase 2 of the Capital Grid project, which is the downtown resupply. I mentioned this is because a lot of these substations serve your sites in the District of Columbia. And so we are really hardening our infrastructure, expanding capacity so that we can continue supporting the District of Columbia. So with that, I'll pause for any questions online.
Yeah, we have, I guess, a big question. So Wayne asks, under the district's RPS, electricity suppliers must buy 100% of their power from renewable sources by 2032, with 15% coming from local solar power by 2041. There has been a sharp increase in RPS charges and utility bills within the district over the past 2 years. Also, with the recent spike in PJM capacity charges, limited capacity, and with the current queue for new capacity dominated by resources with low capacity value, i.e. solar or wind, is this RPS goal even feasible from a technical or economic perspective with current realities, such as AI data center electricity demand, increases in Fed government electrification pullback?
That's a great question. And definitely feel free for other folks from the Pepco team to jump in. I can share from just kind of the bigger perspective in that data center requests have just gone up a lot. I think over time, historically, data centers have been located in office buildings, and so that might be a megawatt. And then over time, that's gone up. We used to think a big large load request was 30 megawatts. And obviously now we say large load large load interconnections now start at 50 megawatts. And so, data centers at this point, we've seen data centers go over a gigawatt. And so for us that we serve Atlantic City Electric, all of Southern New Jersey, at times these load requests match all of our demand, peak demand within Atlantic City Electric. And so how we go about serving data centers is important, but for us, affordability is extremely important. We've been trying to partner with legislators such as the District of Columbia, as well as Maryland, trying to be supportive of bringing on new generation. We've indicated that we know that there needs to be additional generation, and if there's a chance that regulated generation is required, we're willing to step into that space as well. So we want to do our part in trying to have a broader, affordable electric grid as well.
Thank you, Chris. And just in the interest of time, Wayne had a few other questions, but we can follow up with him later, just in the interest of time.
Okay, great. Any questions in the room? All right. So again, just want to say thank you so much for attending this day with us. We at Pepco want to be a trusted advisor to try to help think through solutions for you and your sites. So we look forward to continuing the conversation, be it here in the room today or afterwards. Feel free to reach out to any of us as part of the Pepco team. Thank you. Have a good day.
I got